Chainmail. Let's get the legalities out of the way first. You can legally purchase a PDF. I've made a copy and printed it up like this. This is not the entire title. 3rd edition, Gary Gygax and Jeff Perrin, with illustrations by Donna Lowry. I just printed up the first section. It does not have the fantasy supplement. Don't let that confuse you. As usual, Mr. Wargaming is going to learn a new game. Now, this is not a new game. This goes all the way back to, this 3rd edition cuts back to, like, what is it, 1973? But it's new to me, and we're going to learn the way I always learn, by doing it live on camera and screwing things up for the first 2 or 3 videos. 2022 is going to be the year of Chainmail for me. There are quite a few videos on Chainmail on YouTube, but most of those videos are, they take 2 forms. Most of them are theory crafting, and let me teach you how to play. Or they're a 4-hour-long convention game that somebody turned a camera on. Both of those have their value, but I want to see what the game looks like when you actually do this thing called playing it. It's a little nutty, I know, but that's how we roll here in the House of Wargaming. So today we're going to do a little simple battle. You'll notice I'm using some really big figures here. They are, wow, a whopping 15 millimeters. And for those of you that don't know, that are fairly new to the channel, I'm prepping 4 matched armies for Chainmail in 2 millimeters. And you can check those out on the live streams. And of course, coming up in the next year, you're going to see more and more of them. Today, I just want to get a feel for the game. There's no cavalry here. I don't have any cavalry in 15 millimeters. Most of my 15 millimeter figures are for, well, at least when it comes to fantasy, right? I mean, Napoleonics, you gotta have cavalry. But for fantasy, I don't have a lot of cavalry. So we're not gonna do that today. Let's start with our bad guys. Chainmail only uses 3 kind of foot. That's not strictly speaking true, but generally speaking close enough. As you can see, we've got a regular line of spearmen over here in the back. We are gonna call those armored foot. In Chainmail, there's light, there's armored, and there's heavy. Both of these skeletal units, and like I said, we're not doing fantasy, we're just doing basically medieval, but I've got the fantasy figures. So we've got a unit of 10 armored foot and a unit of 12 armored foot. The mixed zombies and mummies back here are going to be not just lightfoot. I'm going to treat them the way you treat peasants. Peasants are not very good, but they are very cheap. And they are hard to motivate to move into combat with the enemies. And then we just have a small unit of 4 archers. Now, in Chainmail, Gygax recommends that you use a ratio of about 1 to 20. So technically, if you were playing a D&D mass battle, we would be looking at a unit of 200 spearmen, a unit of 240 spearmen. This would actually be 80 archers, and then with the 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 zombies that we're treating as peasants, that would be another 200 peasants. Next to them, we've got the good guys, and likewise, I'm kind of fudging things a little bit. We have our 1 unit of heavy foot. That's the dwarves back here. Don't worry about the weapons. They are all wearing heavy armor. They're classed as heavy foot. Our mismatched mix and match of heroes here in the front are going to be armored foot. And then we have to decide what to do with these elves over here. I am inclined to call them light infantry, just so that we've got 1 of each, light, armored, and heavy. Again, remember, we're testing the rules out here. Not sure how this is going to go. The fact is, Chainmail rules, as much fun as they are, I mean, this old boy here is on the cover of a game that launched a revolution in tabletop war games. So there's got to be something here. People were having fun with this for a good long while before Arneson and company showed up with the, and added the Braunstein on top of it. So let's find out what people saw in this game before it turned into what we think of as RPGs. Our heroes have taken the field. We are going to call these elves lightly armed with longbow. That's a range of 15 inches. Because I'm using 15 millimeter figures, I'm going to use the measurements given in the rule book. When I play with 2 millimeter figures, I'll cut everything in half. That gives me a much larger table. I'm doing just kind of an oversized skirmish here. Note that we've got woods directly in front of us. The first thing that's given me fits already is that according to the rules, woods slow movement by 50% and they prevent the entrance of formed troops. Nowhere in the rules does it define what that means. In addition, when it comes time to do your moving, Gygax and Perrin say, here, your formation changes, and there it is right there. Going from column to line takes one move, and from line to column, and column to square. There's no benefit to moving in column or line. In modern games, they'll say column moves at X speed, line moves at a different. I can't find anywhere that makes a difference. Now, there are squares available and in the special units, but I didn't see anything about column or line. Not going to deal with that today. I know, so that's the first thing, right, to be aware of. And maybe through our explorations we'll discover more. But I am concerned about this, what to do with the woods. Yeah, they slow movement by 50% and they prevent the formation of formed troops. Okay, so does that mean my guys can spread out? Normally, we tend to think of light units as being able to, hey, look, now it's not a formed, right? Is there any value in whether you're in skirmish order or all piled up like this? Again, I'm not going to worry about that today. In the supplements, like the fantasy supplement, you have individual characters. I'm going to assume that because this is a medieval rule set, you can't enter blocks of troops, cannot enter the woods. Maybe in the future, you'll have to do a formation change into skirmish order, move through at half speed, and then once, because it costs, right? It's going to cost you one move to change formation. So once you get through the woods, to get back into formation costs a full move. All right? The other thing we got to think about is this chart 4, and this is something I've never done in miniature war games. Gygax has rules for exhaustion. How are we going to manage that? My guess is that in Gary's basement, you only had a handful of units to keep track of, so you could just remember what people have done. John, over at John's D&D vlog, he decided to assign percentages. And let me bring that up here, right? Fatigue. Moving 5 turns, moving 2 turns, charging, meleeing 3 rounds. All right, here's what we're going to do. I'm going to use chips to remind myself. When you move, you get 1 chip. When you melee, moving includes charging, by the way. When you melee, you're going to get, I think we may wind up doing 2 chips. And then when you get that 5th chip, that is when you become fatigued and your value lowers. So heavy foot goes to light, armored goes to heavy, etc. Here we see the skeletons have just come out of Skull Mountain. They have put archers over here on, as we look at it, the right, and the peasants are over here on the right as well, and then they've got their 2 units of armored foot ready to come up the left and middle. As you can see, we've got a couple of high ridges. The cliffs are impassable. The hills slow movement by 50% when you're moving up. So clearly these archers are going to take that hill. In addition to that, we'll pan back to show you. Here's where our heroes come in. They're going to have to deal with this tree breaks up formations, and these woods are going to stop them as well. Rules as written, I'm going to use the white die for initiative for the skeletons and the yellow die for the heroes. The heroes have the initiative, and we are not going to be using the simultaneous. We're going to use the move counter move system. Both opponents roll a die. The higher scorer has the choice of moving first or last. The heroes are going to move first. It probably doesn't matter at this point. Our dwarves have moved their full extent 6 inches. The archers only move 6 inches. They want to be protected under their shadow. And the heavy foot have swung around the right side of these woods. As you can see, the archers were facing due east. They moved 3 inches forward. They can move a total of 9 inches. So they moved 3 inches forward, wheeled up to 45 degrees. They took the full 45. That cost them a quarter of their move, which, if I'm not mistaken, is 2 1/4 inches. And then they used the rest of their move to move forward up on the hill. But you know what? Now that I think about it, I have to pull these guys back because they only get to move at a half rate. So if they move 45, 4.5 inches, 2 1/4, then they can only move another 1.25 inches. So we're going to leave them right there. Charging into them is going to mean running up the hill. That's going to be a problem. The peasants are where things get complicated because Gygax says, and I should say Gygax and Perrin every time, but Gygax is the name you know. If we take a look at how peasants work, it says in a melee they'll fight as light foot, but the problem is to get them to fight. 2 dice must be rolled for every peasant unit before they'll do anything. Well, wait a minute. Then it has what you roll for to attack and to defend against. But to do anything implies movement. I don't have a movement column here. I think they can walk around all you like. But it's whenever there's melee to be involved, getting them to charge and whatnot. So we will go ahead and move those zombies up. The full movement for peasants, which is going to be... It's not listed in the movement. Oh, it says they fight as light infantry, so they are going to be able to move a total of 9 inches. Now, once again, I'll show you how the movement works as I understand it. I'm going to move them up 4.5 inches. Well, hold on. I'll bring them up 3. Then it costs 2.25. Bringing them up to 5.25, and then they can move the other 3.5. So we'll kind of wheel them 45 degrees, and he's going to move up to here. So they're going to stop right in the gap, and they're going to wait right here, and they're going to say, "Come at me, armored bros." So those 10 are lined up, and that's going to allow the archers to take some shots at these guys before the peasants get stuck in. Hey, look at that. We're making decisions. We have tactical challenges. We could have sent all of our heroes around this way to complicate matters for the archers, who then would, they'd have to be firing over the heads of these guys, but we didn't do that. We're going to try to get in and wipe them out and then come at these guys from the backside. Before we can do that, we need to talk about archer fire. Now, these guys, if they don't move, they can fire once before they move. Then they move, the undead, and then these guys could fire again. Since they moved up to most of their movement, they only get the shot now here at the end of the movement phase. These are fatigue chips. Everybody has moved once. Yes, skeletons can become fatigued. I put 2 chips down on the archers because they moved uphill, which costs 2 fatigue. Moving into the missile fire phase. Now, I probably shouldn't have moved these guys. They've got a range of 15 inches. The actual movement, there is a thing called split fire where you can move half your distance, take a shot, and move half again. That's for things like light cavalry. We don't have any of that today, but I thought I'd mention it. If these guys had not moved, they could have fired at the end of their movement phase. Instead of moving, they could have fired. But the skeletons would have been out of range. So the smart move might have been to make the skeletons go first. Hope they moved into range, because then you fire once on your movement, and then you can fire again here now that we're in the missile phase. Well, we're in the missile phase now, and so when you are firing with archers, you roll on this table. And we've got 10 archers that are firing at half armor or shield. Now, I'm assuming this is light troops, this is armored or heavy troops, and this is armored troops. Light, medium, and heavy. Light, heavy, armored, whatever. Thanks for that. The nomenclature is a little bit wonky here. I assume it springs out of a culture that is not like the culture of today, and I mean the wargaming culture. Be that as it may, since I have 10 archers firing, I am going to roll a d6, and on a 1 to 3, the enemy will lose 3 figures, and on a 4 to 6, the enemy will lose 3 figures. Oh, the suspense is killing me. It's gonna be, oh, it's cocked. I don't know what that means. Oh, look at that. It's a 5. That means this unit is going to lose 3 figures, and I'm going to pull the 3 off the back. Plunk, plunk, and a plunk. First blood to the elves, which means we need to take a look at the morale. Those guys, being heavy foot, don't have to check until they've lost more than a third of their units. 3 out of 12 is only a quarter of their units. They don't need to check anything, so we are done with turn number 1. Hey, we got through our first chainmail turn in, what was that, about 10 minutes of video time? Not bad at all. Steps 1 through 6 are repeated. Step 1 is both opponents roll a die. So we're going to roll for initiative again. And in this case, we get a tie. The side with the higher die, there may be a reason to give one player a bonus or a tiebreaker. Be that as it may, these skeletons now get to go first. They're going to do absolutely nothing. They're going to wait for these guys to come around. And when you spend a turn not moving, your fatigue tokens go bye-bye. These guys, however, absolutely are going to move. Now, it costs half a move to change formation by up to 90 degrees. That's how I read this anyway. There we go. See, here's our facing changes. If you want to move oblique, I'm assuming that's up to 45 degrees. Anything beyond 45 degrees is going to be treated as a left or right. And if you turn around directly, that's going to be one full move. So those armored boys on the edge are going to have to give up 4.5 inches to turn 45 degrees, which means they can move straight ahead 4.5 inches. Well, we're going to move them 3, and then we're going to turn 45 degrees. That's 4.5, giving them another 1.5 inches of movement, so they're going to move up to here. And that's going to earn them a fatigue token. Let me move some more guys. These guys are now going to charge into combat. Charge movement for the heavy foot is 12 inches. And anytime you expect to end your move in base-to-base contact is a charge move. As you can see, this is well within 12 inches. Hey, a charge move is going to earn them 2 fatigue markers. And we move them up like so. Well, before we do that, we got to measure. It's from front to front. So they're charging a total of 4.5 inches to get into contact here. And now we have another special case that we didn't really talk about, or that isn't quite specified. And we'll just kind of leave these 3. We're going to pull everybody from the back rank. It's not talked about in the rules. What happens if you charge 2 units at the same time? This is dealt with in modern rules all the time. This is where Chainmail is largely a GM game. Hey, look, we did our charge. We'll come back to that. These guys have only used half of their movement. So now, because these are archers, they do have the option of refusing combat. And now we need to go back in and reference where that's at. There's where is it? Charging. When you charge, missile troops. Interspaced with other footmen. Oh, well, they're not interspaced with other footmen, so we have to do melee resolution. But before we do that, these guys now could also charge, but they don't have to, and we're not going to. We're going to leave them there. Because they're within 45 degrees, these guys can charge over there. And in fact, maybe that's the smart play for these guys. Let's do this. We're going to swing them around here, and we are going to leave them right there, blocking the way. Now, they can fire indirect fire. The problem is indirect fire reduces your range by half, so they're only going to be able to fire 7.5 inches. But the plan there is to force these guys to come up, take a few casualties, hopefully. And remember, they might just run away. So the other thing that'll happen, well, let's just go over it, shall we? We have completed the moves. The question is, do we want these guys to charge into combat here? Or do we have them charge that unit over there? And I'll tell you, just to kind of keep things simple, remember this is just a test. Well, what's the charge rate? How far can armored guys charge? They are pretty stunty. They can only charge 6 inches. Well, 6 inches is going to be about right there. And they can make a little bit of an oblique movement. So just to keep it friendly, let's go ahead and move them up like so. Okay? Now they charged, so that's going to buy them 2 more fatigue tokens. Move, charge, and then these guys are also going to charge. But because they're charging peasantry, we're going to have to go back to, and this is where you can hear me flipping around. If anybody knows of a really solid cheat sheet for this game that has all this information on it, you know, drop a thing in the comments, because this is getting a little bit silly. Peasants, you got to roll a 2d6, and to defend against armored foot, another heavy foot, we got to roll 2d6, and we're hoping for a 7 or higher. Hey, we got a 5, so they are not going to stick around. Rout means retreat. So retreat means turn around, make 1 move. These guys, however, are routing, which means they have to move 1.5 moves. As light infantry, they are going to have to route 13.5 inches, which is going to take them off the table. They opted not to stand. However, these guys did charge as heavy foot. That charge will take them up to about here. That's close enough. And because they charged, they're going to be sitting on 3 tokens. Although, now that I think about it, we forgot something, didn't we? If these guys don't move, they can fire their bows once. Now, there's only 4 of them, so we can look at our firing, and with 4, they're only going to knock somebody out on a 4, 5, or a 6. So with a 2, that first bow shot did absolutely nothing. They're going to get another chance to fire here in just a moment. But we have to worry about these melees over here first. The charge just gets you stuck in, and this is where we roll on over to the combat tables. We have another cheat sheet. This is the one cheat sheet that Gygax and Perrin left with us. So that's one we're going to look at. With that melee taken care of, we're going to swing back around to this side now. The dwarfs, because they're meleeing, are going to be exhausted. They charged, they moved, they charged, they meleeed once. We're going to call that an exhaustion. We're trying to play this as close to the rules as written as possible. I think they're exhausted, but it might be wrong. Let's go ahead and take a look at the fatigue. If you move, charge, meleeing 2 rounds. So on that first round of melee, we're just going to give them 1. Looking at the combat tables, we are going to have a total of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10 versus 10, but it's going to be armored versus heavy. So the skeletons are heavy foot. Fighting armor, you get 1 die per 2 men. Kills on a 6. So the white dice are going to be killing on 6. Heavy versus armored means you get 1 die per man. So I got 10 yellow dice with kills on a 5 or 6. So we'll roll these out here in the open, and we'll count up our kills. The white dice get a grand total of 0 kills. The yellow dice, killing on 5s and 6s, get a grand total of 2 kills. And there is our results. But we're not done just yet, because we now need to tally up our, we have index. The side with fewer casualties determines the ratio, and I'm going to use a red die for this, I think. Side with fewer casualties determines the positive difference between their losses and those suffered by the... So they got a positive difference of 2. Multiply this by the roll of a die. Well, I got one right here. So we got a total of 6. Note that. So they got a total of 6 on this post-battle sequence. The side with the greater number of surviving troops. Here's our 2 casualties. These guys are dead. The side with the greater number of surviving troops. Hey, that's our heavy boys. Determines the positive difference between the number of troops and those of the enemy. Okay, again, we're going to add 2. So this becomes a total of 8. Each side multiplies their surviving figures by morale rating factors. So the skeletons with their heavy foot are going to have a score of 40. The armored foot are going to have a score of 70. Then total those. So it's 78 for the heroes versus 40 for the skeletons. And then you figure out the difference. 40 versus 78 is a difference of 38. The loser has to move back a half a move in good order. In this case, that half a move is going to take them back 4.5 inches to here. But they remain in good order. So we'll bring back these 5, and then we'll bring these 3. Now, hey, wait a second. That's a move. Does that add a fatigue token? I think maybe it does. So we'll drop a 5th fatigue token on these guys. And now they are exhausted. Now they're in good order, but they're exhausted. The other question becomes, what do the victorious dwarves get to do now? Retreat. So they were... Is that a retreat? Nope, it's just move back in good order. Retreat is a separate... You got to get a difference of 60 if you want your enemy to retreat. because the dwarfs charged, they will complete their charge movement, and if that takes them into contact with these skeletons again, then you would repeat the melee. However, they use their full movement just to get into contact, so they're done. Now we got to look at this combat. And in this combat, so the dwarves won that one, but now the heroes are in trouble because you've got a total of 5, you've got 9 armored foot, which gives them 4 dice. Oh no, armored foot fighting light foot, they are going to get to roll 9 dice. So we'll give the skeletons the yellow, just to save me a little bit of time here. There's 2, 4, 6, 8, 9, and they are going to be killing on a 5 or a 6. The light foot against the heavy foot, they get 1 die per 2 men, so they're going to get a total of 5 dice. And they are going to be killing only on a 6. So same thing, we got kills on 5 or 6, we got kills on 6s, and this time the yellow is the skeletons. And how about that? So the elves managed to score 2 kills. First round of combat earns each side a fatigue token. I'm going to keep those guys laying down so I can remember how many kills it was. On the other side of the ledger, we've got a total of 4 kills. So 2 kills here to 4 kills there, and once again, 1, 2, 3, 4 kills. Question: do we complete the melee, or do we do our index? When casualties exceed a certain, morale must be checked. If the loss is brought below the percentage by missile fire, check before the melee. If it's brought about by melee, check morale after melees have been completed. The unit remains stable, it doesn't need to check morale again. Oh, okay, so that's basically what we're doing right now, is that morale check. Any unit fails to, let's see, if the loss suffers losses to the stated percentage, but at that time it must be removed from the table. All right, so I think we have to do 2 things here. I think we got to run through this post-battle sequence and then see what happens, and then because both sides have lost enough figures, we're going to have to check morale for both sides. But let's figure out the results of the morale of the melee first. The skeletons have fewer casualties. 2, 4, 6, 7, 2, 4, 6. And they have more surviving figures. The difference in the number of casualties is 2. So we roll a d6 and we multiply those. So they get a 2 times 3 is 6. Then you add the positive difference between the number of troops and those of the enemy. 2, 4, 6 to 2, 4, 6, 7. So we add 1 to that. 7. Then we have to do our multiplication. The heavy foot are going to have 35. They're going to have a total of 42. It's 7 for each, 5 for each of the 7 guys is 35. Plus our 7, they've got a score of 42. The light foot only get 4 points per dude. So they only have 24. So 47 versus 24 is a difference of 23. The elves have to move back a half move in good order. Because they are light troops, they're going to move back 6 inches in good order. I think it's going to take them out of the... That is going to take them out of the camera, but that's okay. That's a move, so we're going to give them another... We're going to give them a fatigue marker. They're sitting on 3. Then we need to check morale for both of these units. To do that, you roll, because they both exceeded their instability due to excess casualties numbers. The light troops have lost more than 25%. The heavy foot have lost more than a third. So the light troops have to roll a 7 or better. And they roll a 9, so they're okay. The skeletons have to roll a... Oh, I'm sorry, it was 8 for the light troops, 7 for the skeletons. These skeletons rolled a 5. They have failed to make the required score. They are removed from play immediately unless no route of retreat is open surrounding you. Well, they have won the melee, but because they took so many losses, they are removed from the battle. So that is the second unit gone. Not without doing some heavy damage to the elves. And that's the end of the turn. I tidied up the battlefield, and we are ready to roll for initiative. The heroes score a 4, so they're going to get to move first. The question is, what do we want to do with our fellas? We're going to hold tight right here. We're going to dare these skeletons to charge. We're going to get rid of our fatigue. We're going to spend a turn getting ready. Our archers will go ahead and move up the full 9 inches. That's going to put them right there. They are protected. Now, if I wanted to, I'm going to leave them in 5 abreast. They can fire two across, but I'm going to leave them at 5 abreast. Remember, it costs... So there's 3, and there's 4. Remember, it costs half a move to get rid of... You have to... What am I trying to say here, guys? It costs half a move to change formation. I'm going to leave them 5 abreast. Doesn't make any difference at this point. We've got the important bits of the battle in the camera. Our heavy heroes are going to charge these archers. Remember, it costs half move. That's going to cost them 2 fatigue points to get into combat with these guys. And they're just, well, what a mess. They're just falling all over the place. It's 2 fatigue, plus they're going uphill. So I think they may be sitting on 5 or 6, but I'm not going to worry about it. If you're fatigued, you're fatigued. The important thing is that when we get to melee for them, they're going to be fighting as light troops. They outnumber the archers 10-4. I'm good with that. All of the movement is done, and now this fatigue mechanic is interesting because it really does force these guys to take a time out from the battlefield. These guys are fatigued. They're going to be fighting as light troops? I don't think so. They're just going to stare at each other. That does play into the hands of the archers here because they're not fatigued. And remember, who cares if you're fatigued if you're just firing a bow? We may actually decide to bring these dwarves back here, but we'll see. So the only melee we've got to deal with is this one over here. The bowmen versus the armored guys. The bowmen are only going to get to roll 1 die per 2 figures. They're fighting heavy foot. And they only kill on a 6. On the other side, we're going to have to roll all 10 dice for... And I've got... do I have 10? Yeah, I got 10 yellow dice. Those heavy guys are going to be killing light foot on a 5 or a 6. So the white dice kill on a 6. Not likely, but it is what it is. So we're done with the next turn. Oh, you know what, though? I kind of got that wrong, because these guys are only fighting as light troops. I want to redo that combat, because it's going to wind up being 2 dice versus 5 dice, right? With all of these only killing on a 6. And this is important for the battle. Forgot about the fatigue. It's a brand new mechanic. You guys are going to have to cut me some slack. Killing on a 6, and this is why I wanted to redo it, because you do get these miraculous differences here, right? So in this case, the skeleton archers were able to score 2 kills. I guess now I got to put these guys back up, like so. So this time, kind of some top-heavy guys. This time, as we do it properly, our numbers are going to change. These skeletons have done more kills. So it's going to be a die roll times 1. So it's going to be 6. Oh, they lost 1 though, right? Yeah. So it's going to be 6 for them, plus the 3 times 4. So they get a total of 18 again. How about that? So it's 18 for the archers, and then it's going to be the heroes have... Wait, they only lost 2 guys, right? Yeah. So the heroes have 5 more guys, and we add that 5 to 5 times the standing, so they get a result of 40. So it's 18 to 40, a difference of 22, move back a half a move, That's only 6 inches in good order, and that means these 3 archers are going to stop right back here, and they're still in the game. That makes things way more interesting. We'll clean these up. The archers have lost 25% of their units, which I think triggers an index check. Light units, when they exceed 25%, well, they're at 25%. They don't have to make an index check, and that really complicates things for these guys considerably. Do they rest or do they charge on the next turn? Well, I don't know, but we need to wait and see. Does anybody else have to make an index check? I don't think so. You only make it the first time that you fall below that number of casualties. I think you also only make an index check if you take additional casualties. So these archers over here have already passed an index check. Until they take another casualty, they don't need to make another one. This is an initiative roll, and of course it's tied. The heroes get the initiative. So the question is, do these guys charge into combat? They're already fatigued. So it doesn't matter if they take any other casualties. Yeah, we're going to go ahead and pile in. Pow. They are still super fatigued. Is there double fatigue? I don't think so. Not worried about it. These guys do not have a shot on those guys, but it doesn't matter because we're just going to go ahead and charge with our fresh dwarfs. Kablam. And that's going to be, they have like 1.5 inches of movement left. 2 fatigue tokens, and then we'll go ahead and move these guys up to here and face this way so that, oh no, you know what, we're just gonna unfatigue them. You can see where if you had battles with multiple players, fatigue becomes really important, really limits what you can do and when. As it is, we are already, there's no movement for the skeletons, we're already back into melee territory. Let's do the armored versus the exhausted armored only have 7 guys. Did I remove their casualties? 2, 4, 6, 7, which means they're only going to get 3 dice. The archers are only going to get 1 die. Everybody does kills only on 6s. The archers have won a second round of combat. That 1 casualty gives them a total score of 2 plus the 12 for having the 3 survivors. They have a result of 16. The heavy foot are going to wind up with a result of 4 extra figures plus 10, 20, 35 points. So 45. So even though they won the combat, the difference is still 45 versus 16. It's still going to be in that move back half a move. These archers are going to exit the table. I don't know, and these guys are going to pursue off the table, and that's how we're going to end this side of the battlefield. I don't know if they have to pursue off the table. I would argue that it depends on the troop type. If you have an impetuous troop, then yeah, by all means, I would rule, yeah, you got to chase them off the table if you really want them to win. That leaves this combat over here. We are rolling 4 dice for the skeletons hitting on 6s. They get nothing. We are rolling 10 dice for the armored foot hitting on 5s and 6s, and we're only going to get 2 hits. But that's going to be enough to trigger an index check on the next, and I got to get into the habit of just leaving those guys down. So 2 casualties times 5 is a score of 10. You've got 5 extra guys times 6, that's going to be, no, I'm sorry, it's not 5 extra, it's 60. Plus the 10 is 70, plus the 5 extra guys. The heroes have a score, the dwarves have a score of 75. The I'm sorry, no, even that's wrong. It's 70 plus 10 is 80, plus the extra 5 guys is 85. The skeletons now are going to have a total score of 2, 4, 6, 36. So the difference between 36 and 45 is move back 1 move in good order. Well, 1 move for these guys is 9 inches. They're going to have to move back to here in good order. And our dwarves are going to be able to pursue them. Well, except our dwarves used all of their movement on the charge. So we'll leave them right there. These guys do have to make an index check, though. They've lost half their unit. And that's going to be looking for an 8 or better. Is it 8 or is it 7? The medium foot, or heavy foot, I guess you should say, 7 or better. 8, they are still in the mix. We're done. We move on to the next turn. So we roll 2d6. The skeletons get to go first, and I guess they actually moved once, and they meleeed once, and I forgot these guys meleeed. They charged and then they meleeed. So there is our... And these guys moved once as well, didn't they? No, I left them still. They just rested. The skeletons get to go first. What are they going to do? They are in charge range of... Are they in charge range of the elves? Maybe they want to charge the elves. They do have a charge range of 12 inches. Yeah, let's go ahead and charge the elves. We might be able to wipe them out. We put our ruler down. Oh my gosh, oh no, they didn't quite make it. So they run up to here. And they are, oh, look at that. They're going to be fatigued after this turn. These guys are not going to be able to reach them. So well, first of all, what are the elves going to do? The elves are going to shoot them. You've got a total of 2, 4, 6 elves firing bows at armored units. And that means on a... They're either going to do... Well, it doesn't matter. They're going to do 2 casualties instead of moving. Ba-chow. So there's 2. Additional casualties. I think we need another index. Or if you succeed your index check, hey, look, 5, they're done. Now bear in mind that the turn order means that the bows, double check, artillery fire, then missile fire, then melee, they're going to get to fire again and wipe out 2 more guys. Do you check index in any given phase where you lose a quarter of your guys, or do you just check the one time that you've lost that much? Or is it every time you take casualties? Because I think what's going to happen next is, well, it's the next turn, isn't it? We can bring these guys around and bring them close to that melee to kind of get them close, but that's going to cost us a fatigue marker. And then on the next turn, I know this is getting a little sloppy. We're getting down to the end of things. The skeletons will get to move first, and they'll at least get to charge in and do some damage, but these guys are also going to get stuck in. I think we've seen how the game works. I think we've seen that it's a little more sophisticated and a little more interesting than it's generally given credit for. It is a bit of a bucket of dice, and I honestly think now that I've played this and seen how many different decision points there are, I think this fatigue mechanic is really interesting. I think it makes all the difference in the world, and I think we're going to be able to have some considerable fun with this rule set moving into 2022. I'm pretty sure I did some things wrong. Some of you guys probably have more experience than I do with this rule set. If that's the case, help me out. Leave some comments down in the description. I may run one more fight with this rule set before I read those comments, but moving into 2022, I want to make sure I get this right, because we're going to have some big fun, particularly once we start using our half-scale figures. This was a very crowded fight. There wasn't a whole lot of room to retreat. There wasn't a whole lot of room for maneuver. When we play half-scale on this same size table, it means we're going to have a lot of decisions to make. And the terrain is going to be a lot smaller, so there's going to be a little bit more maneuvering room. It's going to be a lot of fun. Help me out, if you would. Leave a comment helping me with the rules. And it's not about the algorithm. Who cares about that? You're here. I don't care how many people are here. The important thing is you're here, and I'm praying for you.